we have three talks lined up. The first one is by Ashish Biruli. The topic is training Adivasi youth. Okay, so he is an anti-uranium mining activist, a writer, and a photojournalist. He is one of the co-founders and project manager of Adivasi Lives Matter and the founder of Fridays for Future Jharkhand. He is an active mobile content creator and is digitally cataloging the culture of his Ho Adivasi, that is an indigenous community he belongs to. He is also a TED Talk speaker and the first international photojournalist from the state of Jharkhand. His photos on uranium mining and radiation poisoning have been displayed in Brazil, Canada, and Japan. He is also the winner of an international photo competition for the Survival International Photo Calendar 2021. So now I welcome Ashish Biruli. Please, the stage is all yours. Yeah, enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pratibha, for this wonderful introduction. Sabin ko ikir jibonte johar. I am Ashish Biruli and I belong from the Ho community. I'm one of the co-founder of Adivasi Lives Matter along with my two dear friends, Ankush Vengurlekar and Isha Chitnis. So the journey of Adivasi Lives Matter started in 2016. So it started with lots of questions. So generally, when I ask you all, do you know any indigenous freedom fighter? Generally, in the history books, we all know about Bhagat Singh.
Ashish ji, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Can you please spell the name of the community? I missed that. Sorry.
Ho community.
H-O?
Yeah, H-O.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So my question was in the history books, we don't study about the indigenous freedom fighters. All we know about is Mangal Pandey, Mahatma Gandhi, Bhagat Singh. But do you know about Birsa Munda, like Tilka Maji? Tilka Maji ignited the freedom fight in the year 1784, which is 70 years before Mangal Pandey. But we don't tend to read these stories about Adivasis in history books. So this was the question. And the second question, what we came to was the population of India is more than 1 billion right now. And the population of Adivasi is 8.6% of the total Indian population, which is around 10 million. 10 million. So the majority of Adivasis is so much, but we are not able to hear the stories of them. The thing is, why we don't hear the stories? Because all the platforms are governed or controlled by non-Adivasis. And if you Google about the Adivasi filmmakers, article writers, journalists, you will not find many. There are very few. And also, if you look at the histories, the control over writing histories have been over non-Adivasis, and in that way, the histories of Adivasis have been erased. And also, in other way, if you look into, is Adivasis have never given a chance to write histories. And also, I missed out one point. We know about Jallianwala Bagh, right? But do you know about the Saraikela Kharsua Golikand, which happened in just after the independence in 1948 in one of the district in Jharkhand, and more than 10,000 people were killed in the order of the Odisha government, and that happened just after the independence, and that is completely unacceptable. And that happened on the 1st January, and 1st January is celebrated is remembered as a black day in the Adivasi community of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Odisha. So these kind of stories, which are so much important, general public, general our students who go to school, they don't read in history books. This is not part of their syllabus, which is very disappointing. And these stories should be known by the majority of Indian citizen. And this is where the inception of Adivasi Lives Matter came. That why we should create a platform where Adivasi stories could be read and could be shared with other Indian citizens, with both non-Adivasis and Adivasis as well. So from 2016, we started this uh, journey, and right now we are we are training Adivasi youth from the states of Tripura, Chhattisgarh, and Tamil Nadu. And more than 500 Adivasi articles have been created, have been written, and more than 300 videos have been created by the Adivasi youth. And this have been fantastic, because this has helped share Adivasi knowledge. This has helped uh, in the from the perspective of non-Adivasis, as how we have been Adivasi community has been misrepresented in many ways. In general public, we feel like Adivasi community is very uncivilized. They eat human flesh. But when these articles, where people are able to read now, there is lot of unlearning in non-Adivasis communities. Have been articles of Adivasi, like how their festivals are celebrated. None of the Adivasi festivals harm the nature. They are all eco-friendly. And we all know that people worship in temples and churches. And there is, and what all we do is, uh, we pray, we worship for our self-benefit. But in Adivasi community, they don't worship in temple, they don't worship in churches, but they have a sacred grove which is called Jahir Khan, and that is in open place, which is surrounded by trees. And the priest, with the Adivasi priest who prays, who worships there, they don't pray for self benefit. They don't pray ki make me a rich, make me successful, make me pass in my exams. No such kind of prayers is done there. They pray for the balance of nature. Like, for example, uh, the season should be balanced, the monsoon should come in proper time. So all such prayers are done, but not for self benefit. So these kind of learnings, and these kind of stories which have been hidden, which have been not heard, are now can be read in Adivasi Lives Matter platform, which is an online platform. uh, we have a separate website for it. And uh, if you www.adivasi lives matter, and you can visit the website, you can read hundreds of articles written by Adivasi content creators. And this the whole plan uh, ideated for one purpose, is that people uh, in India should learn to respect Adivasis, because they are the first settlers of India. Uh, and they should given big big respect, and also the knowledge which they inherited from their ancestors are so beneficial for us, because the sustainable lifestyle which they continue to continue to obey is something all the climate activists should learn, all the non-indigenous people should learn from them. And also the way the Adivasis have been represented, misrepresented from hundreds of years, and that gap, the gap which is vacant, that gap is to be filled right now. And that is something very important, and we all should appreciate Adivasi people, Adivasi community, and that is how the vision of Adivasi Lives Matter looks upon, and the mission which we have committed, that this vision to teach Adivasis to uh, to become digital storytellers, because the stories which they write and the way they portray is nobody else can do, because the word which I used is misrepresentation. Because other community people might misrepresent the Adivasi communities, but Adivasi will not, because they are something, they are someone who can write about their own community and their best way, like nobody else can do. So that is why we are training Adivasi youth to become uh, digital storytellers. And and uh, and right now we have uh, the Adivasi youths are also being paid for their work. We are paying them, mm, paying them uh, for their articles. Right now we have paid around 10 lakhs of rupees, and and this has all been possible because of crowdfunding. And if you want to support them, you can visit our website, www.adivasi lives matter, and you can encourage Adivasi Lives Matter organization and the content creators as well. Thank you so much. Johar.
Thank you, Ashish ji. I think that was a very, very important presentation, because one of the four main themes of this conference is communities, and you bring in the voice of the marginalized and the unheard community, as we can say. Sometimes the languages are also not recognized on the registration of our country's languages. I think we are missing out on a lot of cultural information, not having these languages, tribal languages registered. So I think that is a legal thing that you should probably file as a PIL and insist that all tribal languages are also registered as national languages. Otherwise, we are poorer in this country, leaving out some 20,000 tribal languages, in my opinion. So thank you so much for bringing this to the forum today. My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Anandji.
Yeah, over to you, Purnima ji.
Yes. The next talk that we are having is about ecological education in school. We are having with us Nikita Pimple, who is an educationist and environmentalist. Nikita Pimple is the founder and principal of Rishi Valmiki Eco School at Goregaon West in Mumbai, which aims to provide quality education with an emphasis on environment conservation to the students from the weaker financial group of the society. Nikita has created an extensive wildlife story-based curriculum, one to connect children with nature. One is the name of the curriculum, VANN, one. So that is name of the curriculum, to connect children with nature and to create a future greener generation. Her wildlife stories have been published in the print media, The Hindu. She has completed her remedial teacher course and actively working with kids who are finding it difficult to perform according to the grades. She has received an award, Change Maker for Indian Youth, by Inner Wheel Club of Bombay Central in 2016. She is the recipient of the prestigious Sanctuary Asia Green Teacher Award 2018. So welcome, Nikita ji, and you can take over now and share your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Purnima ma'am. Thank you so much. I'll just present my screen. Is it visible, Purnima ma'am?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Anand.
we can see.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, thank you so much, Anand and Sprouts, for inviting me to talk about our work, our school. So thank you so much. As Purnima ma'am has already told you all that I'm from Rishi Valmiki Eco School. I'm founder of Rishi Valmiki Eco School. It is based in Goregaon. Before to tell you like what exactly we do in the school, I'll just give you a little background about the school. So we started the school in 2010. So what happened in 2009, I was happened to go in the huge slum area in Goregaon. So in the urban, to go in the slums and actually go inside and talk to people, it was a very different experience for me. I had never done that before, but my parents have been doing it for many years, like now for like 34 years, they have been doing it. When I went there and spoke with a lot of children and families, I realized that not only rural areas, but even in urban areas, children are not getting quality education. And we should start something where we are giving not only education, but the quality education to children. And apart from that, there is really requirement of giving exposure of a lot of things to children. And more than that, I feel to build a school where there is empathy and children are loved, because something which these children were missing on, more than education, more than exposure, it was about the love. And this is how we started Rishi Valmiki Eco School. And I'm very happy to share with you all that my children say that our school is our second home. So we have been able to, we have been, I would say to some extent, be successful to make such an empathetic environment for our children. Our school is based at Goregaon. So we have been running it in the 4 classrooms on the BMC building. So in the 4 classrooms, we are running from nursery to 10th standard. We started with 9 children and now we have 567 children taking education in our school. So you can see on the left-hand side, the first picture, it's the same area in Goregaon from where all the children come. Now, what exactly we do in the school? So we have 4 important pillars. First, obviously, it is academics. So we are following state board syllabus, but we have completely transformed it into activity-based learning. So everything is done into experiential learning model. Second is, yes, extracurricular activity. So you name it and we have that activity in the school. So we run a lot on donations. So a lot of associations we do with a lot of NGOs, and this is how we have all the co-curricular, most of the co-curricular activities in the school: yoga, karate, guitar, music, drama, sports. Third is special education, that though we are focusing a lot on activity-based learning, there are some percentage of children in every classroom, more than 10% of the children in every classroom who need special attention. And that's why we have remedial education in the school, special educators in the school. And we also get the testing done of the children and who need extra support, we provide that. And yes, the last but very important about which we are going to talk today is nature education. So what makes Rishi Valmiki Eco School unique is the wildlife module what we have in the school. I'll talk about that. So what is wildlife education or nature education? So generally when we say that all the schools have EVS in the curriculum and nature education in the curriculum, that time we mostly talk about what are the things children or adults should do to conserve nature. So most of the times it is bombarding, that not cut the trees, we have to do the plantation, we shouldn't use thermocol, we shouldn't use plastic. So a lot of conservation messages comes under EVS. But we are not doing this at the school. What we believe is it should come from within. These all practices, or what we have to do, conserve, what all things we should do to conserve nature, it should come from within. And for that, we have to take efforts to make these children fall in love with nature. Now in urban cities, like in cities, children are really away from nature. They are not connected with nature. And if they are not connected with nature, how are we expecting them to conserve it? Just by giving them messages, it is not going to be possible. And this is how, since 2010, we have come up with this wildlife education where each child, each class learn about more than 50 species every year. they are connected with the nature, and yes, they are in love with nature now. So how we do it? So this is what we believe. If they love it, they will value it, and then they are going to protect it. So what we have done, we have completely connected the curriculum with wildlife. So wherever, whichever lessons we feel that here we can incorporate wildlife, we have done that. So you can see this is like one of my favorite story. So this is third standard, My Family and Home EVS lesson of state board syllabus. So when we are talking about my family, we are not only here talking about human families. Here we are talking about animal families. So in animal families, animal kingdom, there are extended family, there are joint families, there are nuclear families. Like you can see hornbill is a nuclear family, seahorse is a single father family, sloth bear is a single mother family. So this is how we have connected it with it, and we have written a story about it. So when we talk about My Family and Home, we talk about the animal kingdom family, and this is how children feel connected with the nature. They feel that yes, we all are part of this nature, we are same, and automatically that love is generated. Basically, more than love, you start appreciating wildlife, and once you start appreciating, you love them, you love that. Now this is one more example. When we are teaching Vibgyor to pre-primary or primary section children, here we talk about all the 7 colors which are present, which are existing in the nature. We talk about these birds. Mathematics, I think it is the easiest subjects to connect environment with. Here we talk about the number of tigers, reducing or increasing number of tigers because of the project, and then you have mathematical sums of addition, subtraction using these examples. Again, this is also one of the wonderful example, Our Home and Environment. So why like books are talking about only humans? When you're talking about EVS, there has to be wildlife into it, nature into it. So when we are talking about Our Home and Environment, we talk about the wonderful architecture done by the animals. You can see here the Bioweaver's nest, hornbill's nest. Then we also talk about the problems which are caused because we are encroaching the environment of the animals, their home. And there we talk about the man and animal conflicts. So this is how we are connecting it at the primary level itself, before even they go in secondary section. Yes, apart from this, like connecting curriculum with wildlife, apart from this, we have written 82 stories where we are connecting or teaching life skills to children. As I said, that our children come from weaker socio-economic strata of the society. And here it is very important that we talk about values and life skill for children. So when I say life skills, it's about accepting yourself, understanding your own strength. So once children are going to pass out 10th standard, more than what a teacher actually taught them from the content, they're going to remember what they felt about themselves. And here we came up with this plan where we teach life skills through environment and nature education. So you can see here panther. Panther is basically an Indian leopard who has more melanin in the body and was darker in color. And this story is talking about exploring your strength. Though you are different from the other leopards, this panther has realized its strength. It can camouflage really well in the forest because of the dark color, accepted itself, and is doing so well. So this is how we are talking about animal life, and then children connect it with the animals. And you won't believe, like even 8th standard students start talking about what all inferiority complexes they have. It's most of the times, unfortunately, because of your close members in your family, your neighbors. Most of the times they talk about they feel inferior because they are darker in color, dusky, or they feel that they're short or they are too tall, or most of the children say like we are very healthy, because of that we don't have confidence. These all problems children openly talk about when we give examples of wildlife. Even when I said that family example I gave you, the story, no children were ready to talk about the different families they live in, because most of the time they feel ki if they're living in single mother or single father family, that's something odd and I shouldn't be sharing. But once this story is narrated, our children start openly talking about it. So this is the wonderful impact of the nature or wildlife education among children. This is about not to boast. The pelican, everybody must be aware about the pelican, and pelican has a very different beak and a beautiful beak, and how this pelican starts feeling proud about itself. And then here we introduce a lot of birds with different beaks, so they are gaining the knowledge as well as understanding that everybody is unique and we shouldn't boast. Fight your fears. This is one of my favorite story, a honey bath, where the sloth bear is very scared to get honey. It's scared of honeybees, and how this sloth bear get over its fears. And then we have a conversation or discussion among kids that what fears they have and how can we get over it. Again, very interesting. So at our school, Rishi Valmiki Eco School, we don't have any taboo topics. We talk about anything, everything openly, because we talk about nature. When you are connected with the nature, automatically there is no taboo about any topic. So here you can see the picture where there is a bullfrog mating on right hand side, where me and my students are peeping for bullfrog, and we are talking about mating of the bullfrog, and these are primary students. So it's normal, it's natural, and that's why we don't have taboo. So this is how we talk about a lot of topics. So there is a beautiful story of a Baya Weaver where we talk about how the male is trying to attract a female. And then at the end of the lecture, when we narrated it for the secondary section, we asked children, what did you learn from this story? So kids said, we learned that if you want to get married, before that, you have to be settled and you should have your own house. So this kind of discussion, it's so difficult to have with children. But with these stories, it has become so easy. Again, in our school, it's nature is a way of life. It's not like once in a while thing. Once in a twice or thrice a year we have Tiger Day, we have Lion Day. Not like that. It's like ongoing process. So every week, as I said, there is a lecture of wildlife where we talk about wildlife. Apart from that, even annual days are based on wildlife. So you can see in 13-14 we have 70 birds of Mumbai. Entire year students studied about this 70 birds, and at the end of the year they actually performed skits based on this and educated their parents and guests. Then in 15-16, we had mammals of India. So we talk about man and leopard conflict. We talked about Ganges River dolphin crisis, block migration route for Asian elephants. Students actually learned about it, and students went from grade 1 to grade 10. And then they performed skits. Then we had also marine event for the children. So every after 2 years, we have this event based on the donations we raise, but education is ongoing and no annual day, only wildlife festivals we have. Apart from this, in short, a lot of other activities happen. So a lot of environment and wildlife days we celebrate, but again, it is knowledge based. Lot of field teacher training happen for students and teachers. Sprouts have been conducting lot of events. Anand Pendarkar sir and Sprout organization has been conducting lot of lectures for our children. Then 20 lectures by teachers as per the year's wildlife theme. As I already said, that wildlife theme is like annual day for us. And at the end, our children are already now trained to conduct nature walks for other. So for adults also, and for younger kids, we used to teach earlier, but now for primary sections, our secondary section, young naturalists go and teach about wildlife. So that's the impact has created by this education system. Now, this has been a very bad year last year for COVID. It was a very bad year for everybody. Lot of our children are migrated to native place, but you can see these pictures what our children are doing it at native place. On our nature club group, kids were sending a lot of these photos, and they were involved in identification of these animals or creatures they are finding at native place. I don't think like a lot of children must be doing this Rishi Valmiki Eco School, what Rishi Valmiki Eco School students are doing, because they are passionate about nature. Yes, so this is in short.
Sorry, time.
Yeah, so I'm done. So this is in short about the school, and what keeps us going is these are wonderful children, and yes, our lovely kids. I want to say thank you to Anand and Sprouts organization again for welcoming us for this and supporting us, for always supporting our student and our cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita. As an educator and teacher, I've put that in the chat also. I think we are all constant educators through our actions, our children, our neighbors, our colleagues, we are all learning. People only say, oh, those who go to schools and teach in colleges, they are not the only educators. Education is an ongoing process, and our actions are being seen by everybody. So Rishi Valmiki has been absolutely inspiring for all of us. So thank you, and keep doing the fantastic work that you're there. So thank you for joining us and inspiring us with this. Over to you, Purnimaji.
Yes.
We have added the school address of RVS. Nikita, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Anand sir. Now, the third talk that we are having is by Shivaji Panda. He's a deaf professional in sign language studies and a dropout from the corporate academic world in Europe. By dropout, I mean he has left the corporate world. Okay, don't get the meaning wrong, please. um, so from Europe into 2016, he returned to his native village in Odisha. He has been leading the development of an eco-learning village called Shikha Eco-Learning Village. The acronym is SHICOL, SHICOL, and has set up a boarding school for deaf primary school children. Both are part of the Rural Lifeline Trust, of which, I'm sorry for the interruption. I don't know what happened. Okay. He has set up a boarding school for deaf primary school children. Both are part of the Rural Lifeline Trust, of which he is a founding trustee. He is working with some sign language projects that have a broader impact on the education of children who are deaf and hard of hearing. The talk centers around the personal journey of working and leaving the corporate university culture in the UK and returning to the root of an organic dream of sustainable living. Being an innovator, he also focuses on the art of configuring and embedding learning in everyday activities in life. So, Shivaji Panda, please take over the session. Thank you.
Dr. Panda and Dr. Ulrike Zishan have joined us from UK. And Dr. Ulrike will be interpreting for Dr. Panda. Thank you so much, Ulrike.
I think they are unable to mute. Zishan, Professor Ulrich. Okay, done.
Yes, they just unmuted me. Yeah. Thanks. Let's start. The PowerPoint's not opening.
Dr. Zishan, do you have the right?
Now it's coming.
Yes, yes.
Just to point out, Dr. Panda is traveling and he's in the UK. And yesterday also he was traveling and he's joined us. So I'm really grateful for him to take this time. For both Dr. Zishan also joined us very early in the morning from UK. Over to you, Dr. Panda.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry for the technological glitch. Good morning here from the UK. I've been watching all the sessions so far, and I'm really happy with what I've seen from the other presentations, especially Ashish and Nikita. So very happy to see this. My presentation is centering about my life story, but it's not just about my life. It's also a story of change. So, as I am deaf myself, yes, but I don't think of myself just as deaf with some barriers. I feel like the same like everyone. I also operate in the hearing world in the same way. I don't feel that I have a disability. I'm fine as I am. So anyway, now I will talk in brief about SHICOL, Shikha Eco-Learning. So I used to work in universities in the UK. I used to get a good, nice salary. And I could have planned maybe to buy a house there, a BMW car or something. But as I was moving ahead, I suddenly had a realization within myself and I dropped all that. And now, where am I at now? In 2016, I moved back to India. I decided that I will move back. And then as things were going on, the first step was to acquire some land. This was like some empty wasteland that we bought. And you can see this now, what it looked like. It was just like an empty wasteland with a couple of shrubs on it. Here also you can see that there was really nothing. This is 2017. When I bought it, the next day I started working on the land, focused on planting lots of plants in it. And you can see what it looks like now. There are many visitors come who look at this. So you also have a look now. This is what it looks like now.
पहले तो यही था.
Can we mute other people, please? So we have been working on this a lot, but I feel that this is still just a very small beginning. All of you who are in the conference, there are already some famous people amongst us here and people who've worked for 20, 30, 40 years. So I'm still at the beginning. It's a very small scale work. I'm really happy to always meet supportive people. And really our work has two streams. One stream is focused on education and learning, especially alternative learning. Like Nikita was telling previously, it's very similar work. So it's a different type of education. We are teaching within a deaf school, not a hearing school. That's the only difference, but we are applying very similar things. So within education, we have international partnerships with professors and we do research as well. We collect evidence, but and in the other stream, we work on ecology, the environment, farming, so the soil, planting trees, and we use traditional knowledge and we combine this with new technologies like solar energy, water systems, etc. And we apply these things together in a recombination. So these are the things we focus on. The most important thing is relationship with people, knowledge exchange between different people, mutual support, and the motivation that we get from all these connections. That is most important to me. Now we'll see another video. This is showing the various aspects of Shikol's work, which is I'm not able to present here in short because I would need a long time for presenting everything. So instead, there's a kind of summary in the form of a video. So I hope when you see the video, you can catch up on the fact that there are many different work streams going on and you can learn more about what we do from this short video. All right. Thank you. So what you've seen here, that we are also engaged in organic eco-farming. Secondly, within the our work, we actually have 2 sites, and we are designing different design concepts of agriculture. Now you can also see how deaf children learn within the eco environment. They don't learn about the environment, they learn in the environment. It's also a transdisciplinary way of teaching. Just like Nikita was showing in the previous presentation, it's the same kind of philosophy. So right now it's an experiment in learning, also learning from the children. So we always see how are children learning, and then we plan accordingly. It's a back and forth. And this is our process. We also can see all the animals, birds, and all the life that goes on and living together. In the UN, they now have this big meeting, COP26 in Scotland and Glasgow. I also see that they talk about net zero, for example. So 2 years ago, I didn't know anything about net zero. Then I researched it and I learned about it, what net zero is. So my next aim now is also something like net zeroing myself. So in 2022, in the middle of 2022, I want to be a no carbon person. So I'm working on different technologies to add electricity and water systems, how to make those sustainable in a net zero kind of way. So just for myself and my family. Maybe for the whole school it will be difficult, but we'll also do that in future. So I think I'm not going to present a very long story here, but I would like to keep in contact with some of you. I see that there are many similar people who do the same or very similar work. So I appreciate having contacts, networks, and sharing all the knowledge we have. And maybe we can achieve some big work if we all collaborate together in future. So I should stop now. And please contact me on Facebook. You can find us, or on Twitter, or in social media. Or Anand also has my contact if you want to get in touch. Thank you. I'll stop now. And please
Zishan,
watch our work and the website.
I have a question for him, if you can translate.
Yes, this is, sorry, 1 second. Okay, so we are still weak in some areas, he's saying, and please help us with some feedback and contact us. And thanks a lot for to all of you. Yes, the other sign language interpreters will sign the question.
Yes, sure. Thank you. So, yes, Saurav. Okay. My question is that, can you tell us, since he's lived in a big city, how to convert, like you've converted an eco village, how will you convert an eco city? How do Bombay or Delhi or Bhubaneswar become into eco cities according to him? What are the basic changes he would put in?
Questions getting translated. So you are asking me, right? Yes, yes. Okay. Can you see me? See you well, yes. Okay, so my thinking is that talking about a city, cities are actually the places with all problems. All we need in life, like space, movement, health, and all these things are really difficult in cities. Whereas the space in the city, you can change cities to eco. But if you want to do that, the first step is in terms of the place available for people must be right. If you all live in high rises, how can it be eco? It seems impossible. So in a small space, you cram a lot of people into high rises and there's no space. So how can you, for example, have lots of biology, flowers, and so on? So this is the issue of space is very important. So I would say to people, don't move to cities, do the opposite thing, move back to rural areas. And there's a lot of space there. And in urban places, you have a lot of technology to make change. But why does everybody want to move to a city? You can also move back to villages. There you have other options.
Thank you. I think, yeah, that's exactly the kind of the reverse migration that I wanted. You perfectly hit the nail on that. Having 50% of the world's population in cities and then remaining, in just 3% of land area, and then everybody else, the remaining landscape being unattended and left as wastelands. So I think, yeah, we need to create more opportunities and spaces like Sikhol. So thank you so much for that.